Hi, everyone. It's time to get started. I'd like to welcome you to today's webinar, Unlock the Superpower of Your Marketo Platform. My name is Laura, and I'll be your moderator today. Before we get started, I thought I'd go through a few housekeeping items with everyone. We'll get a recording out to you after the presentation. Everyone is in listen-only mode, and please utilize the chat feature if you have questions throughout. We will have a time for Q&A after the presentation, so if a question does pop up, please do send it through your control panel. And with that, I'd like to introduce our speaker today. Andrew Hall is president and founder of Elixiter. Andrew is a veteran of the software as a service space. He served in a wide range of positions at Right Now Technologies, which was acquired by Oracle. And there he oversaw product messaging, web properties, marketing automation, events, and marketing analytics. Andrew leads a team of 45+ Marketo experts at Elixiter focused on best practice implementation and execution in the Marketo platform. I'm really excited to have him with us today to share his knowledge. And with that, I will hand it over to Andrew.
Thank you, Laura, and welcome everyone for carving out 40 minutes of your day today to dive into this topic about unlocking the power living within your Marketo platform. As I was preparing for this talk with you all today, I really thought about the questions that keep CMOs and marketers, whether you're a director, VP, or a marketing manager, up at night. And the three most common questions that, or the things that keep all of us up at night, is really, how to build your brand, how do you grow revenue or help enable that growth of the revenue across your company, and then lastly, how do I prove impact as a marketer and as a marketing organization? And it's that last one about starting with the end in mind. How do I prove impact? And you can see on this slide in front of you, which is the bottom bullet, so you can prove marketing ROI. That's really why most, if not all of you, bought the Marketo platform at the end of the day, is you want to be able to prove marketing ROI. So we're going to help set that stage for you. And so today what we're going to talk about is determining if your Marketo platform is in or out of alignment. And there's some very concrete actionable items you can do to know that. We're going to provide actionable steps to help you correct any of those misalignments that you might identify. And then lastly, just really how to align your Marketo platform with your marketing strategy, your campaigns and operations, again, to really do what we all want to do with this platform, which is prove marketing ROI. So I'll come back to this at the end of the presentation to again start with the end in mind. So when you look at all the things you can do with the platform, we presented this slide on our previous 3-part CMO series on analytics that matter. And it's still important to pull this up before we dive into a lot of details because proving the pipeline that's influenced by marketing, the revenue, which is even better, that's influenced by marketing, but a range of other operational items like the top programs that are pushing opportunities into the pipeline, your conversion rates, your velocity, your lead sources, your acquisition channels versus your multi-touch attribution. These are all extremely important, and the Marketo platform can do all these things for you, but you still need to configure the platform so it can work for you. The nature of a platform is that it's flexible and malleable to your unique business environment. What that also means is you need to be cognizant of the fact that platforms are more powerful than just a simple point solution, and thus it can take a little bit more thought and effort into how you configure it so you do get the types of analytics that you see on this slide. So let's get rolling. I've already talked a little bit about the Marketo engagement platform, and it's no mistake that the top bullet I have there is the marketing analytics, because while I speak with many of you on an ongoing basis, either as customers, future clients, or at events and different activities. We buy it for tactical items like email execution or the ability to have landing pages, newer features like the account-based marketing. These are all extremely important features of the Marketo apps. I can't stress enough that at the end of the day, when I really get down to it with almost everybody I talk to, the reason they're still using the platform and want to continue to use it is for that proving the marketing ROI. So over the course of the last 6 years, as we've engaged with many of you and worked through the different ways in which to leverage and maximize the Marketo platform, we really have been able to break it down into some digestible steps, and we're going to get into that right now. So the first thing you need to do is you need to start with, or for almost all of you, you're going to need to go back and review the different configuration and integration aspects of your system. And this may sound counterintuitive because you may have done it as a launch pack with Marketo. You could have used another professional services org to help you with the initial configuration of Marketo and the CRM integration. But what we've found is things change over time. And even if it hasn't changed, you may or may not have configured everything to really leverage that marketing ROI goal and mindset. So the first thing on the configuration goal is to ensure that you have best practices on your technical setup. And this is just going back and double checking that you have things like your Munchkin tracking code. That's the JavaScript code on all the web properties that you want to be tracking. That's really important. It's amazing. You do a new website revamp or do something new, add different landing pages into your environment that may not be Marketo based, then you forget to let your development team know that they need that extra tracking script on there. We run into that all the time with clients. Double checking that your SPF and DKIM email records are still correct inside your system and showing green and active. Making sure that you've revisited all your communication limits and that you've got your whitelist IP addresses in for when you're testing. All these things are part of Marketo's initial setup checklist, and if you go into their community, you can still get a hold of all these documents. It really is worth your time to go back and just recheck it. So it may be you, if you're the one that's doing the hands-on work inside of Marketo. It may be you, if you're new into your role inside your organization, is double checking the person or people that oversee that and just say, hey, can you go back and just recheck everything and make sure that we're set up correctly. And then the second one is around the integration. And for most of you, that's going to be an integration into Salesforce. It could be Dynamics or another platform. But in the case of something really specific to give you guidance is when we think of something like Salesforce, a common one we see is on setup, people will, in the administrative section, enable all the SFDC activities to flow over. And these are things, just to refresh your memory, like when a form's filled out or a clicked link, or an example is removed from flow. Well, for most of our clients, if they have all those checked, they're sending a tremendous amount of data over to Salesforce that probably doesn't need to be going over there, to be honest with you. It's okay that it stays in Marketo. An example is the removed from flow. You just don't need to be writing an activity log over to Salesforce that you removed them from a flow, especially as your system gets larger. And so this will serve you two benefits. One is you just cut down on the data transfer between the two systems, but it has a real practical element too. It can save you some money in not having to pay for increased storage costs and capacity on the Salesforce side as well. So these are things where you just want the enabled activities for exactly what is really actionable. And what we've found for most clients is it's just 2 or 3. It's, you know, did they fill out a form? Did they click a link? There's 12 activities in this example I'm giving you. And for most clients, 3 or 4 is more than enough information going over. So that's an example of what we mean by going back and just double checking your configuration and making sure that what you initially set up and checked during your setup is still what's needed for your current business use. Another one on the integration is double checking things like your lead assignment rules. It's not so much a Marketo thing. Some of you might have your lead assignment rules actually built in Marketo, but chances are for most of you, you've got it on the Salesforce side. And it's amazing how many times we go in and double check that as part of an ongoing and ramp up process with a new client. And lo and behold, those lead routing rules aren't actually reflective of what's going on. And leads are either getting assigned to somebody who still exists in the company, but is not doing that function, believe it or not. And so they're just largely getting ignored. So double checking some really basic blocking and tackling between the systems will really help you make sure that those aspects are running well. The next one that you want to work on in your roadmap here is around the lead database. I call it the lifeblood of your engagement platform because it really is the core information that's flowing into Marketo through to your CRM platform and everything that you're taking action on. The goal here is quite simple. You simply need to improve your data quality. There is many different ways that you can go about this. The benefits, of course, are increased efficiency and accuracy of your database queries, but what it really means for you and your sales team is the hyper-targeting of your marketing efforts. For some of you, that might be say, an executive invite for an event in New York City, and you can confidently know that you're sending it to those 500 individuals in New York City. For some of you, that hyper-targeting may be broader. You might have 1 million people or more in your database, and hyper-targeting means getting it down to a 30,000 set query. That's exactly the people that need to be getting that message. So it's all relative to the size and scope of your marketing efforts, but the point is that the hyper-targeting is important. It's one of the primary benefits of a platform like Marketo is the smart list capability really allows you to target down, and so you want to take advantage of it. That's a key component of the platform. So our recommendations in this area is to build global lists if you don't already. Global lists allow you to do things very consistently. So an example of a global list would be, say, all your customers, all your active customers. Another global list would be active prospects, and then you can break that down. The reason to have global lists is then you and the rest of your team members are not reinventing some of the most common queries you're going to be doing in the system, or worse yet, one person thinks that they built a smart list that is active customers, but they miss or make a mistake with one or many criteria, and they actually end up sending it to people who aren't customers. So some of this is also for quality control amongst your operations. Another example is making sure you know which records are marketable or not. If you're doing business outside of the United States, and especially through Europe and other countries, your laws and regulations around when and how you can interact with people is increasingly more restrictive. So making sure you have lists and campaigns that deal with those aspects. Purge, this one's a great one, and I do like to remind marketers that it is okay to purge information out. Purge, purge, purge. When you really know things are dead, that the information's no longer valid, they've been marked, say, in your lead lifecycle process as unqualified, and you know some data is bad, it's just absolutely all right to go through the purging process. And not only a purging process in Marketo, but thinking that all the way through and making sure that if you don't also oversee your CRM side, that you're coordinating with them, letting them know, and ensuring that the whole closed loop is done and you're purging through both systems. Duplicate remediation is another one. Sitting down and really thinking through your data capture best practices, your data standardization, how you're storing data. A really obvious example is things like city, country, state, those sorts of items, but it gets more than that, as many of you know, around how you're storing industry information, job titles. The more you can standardize or have smart campaigns that do data transformations to standardize in fields, the more accurate your lists and marketable records will be for targeting. And so all these fall under lead, database, and metrics. And this can be a multi-month project, by the way, depending on your database size and how much you need to do. But we'll get to in a moment why I have this part of the process so far up the roadmap. So for quick reference, Marketo configuration, CRM integration is roadmap step 1 and 2, because you need that before you can really do anything. But we have lead database right here in the third slot, because that's what you can take action on. So now we're going to talk about a few more that are needed as building blocks towards the ultimate goal around marketing ROI. So creative templates is another one. The goal here is to ensure a really robust, user-friendly template library, so you're just not reinventing the wheel, to be honest with you. You can get by with, pasting in new HTML code and some other things, but if you've really designed your templates well, they are quite flexible within Marketo, both landing page and email templates, and you really will save yourself time. The other big area here is that by reducing the number of templates that you use and having a very fixed library, you can do robust testing. And this is increasingly important across all the mobile devices and the cross-platform rendering issues that you run into. And you just want to keep your brand as top-notch as possible. And the more you're changing and just doing brand new templates and everything, the greater chance that you're going to have communications and landing pages that may not render correctly or have a functional deficiency, or you're going to be spending a lot more money constantly testing those. So that's the guidance we have, having worked with a lot of clients in this area. Okay, this next one is extremely important, and it's probably one of the most underrated aspects of getting alignment for future reporting and proof on what you're doing. And this falls in the program structure area. So we want to orchestrate this all with the end in mind around reporting, and the program structure is one way that really helps you avoid a lot of nightmare situations down the road, or I think this is correct, or I don't think it's correct, when you're talking with your sales ops or your sales VP around performance and marketing attribution. So the goal around program structure is to guarantee that core marketing, promotional, and operational tactics are really accurately configured and, most importantly, tracked. And for those that aren't familiar with Marketo's lingo, a program is it's the atomic level inside the system where you are actually putting all the elements around a campaign. So if you take today's webinar, that webinar is a program, and everything about the start to finish activity of that webinar is contained inside of that program. If you go to a live event, everything about that event execution is largely contained within that program. On the Salesforce side, they're generally called campaigns. So program in Marketo equals campaign in Salesforce. The more that you're able to predetermine naming convention and consistency, both in the program structure and Salesforce campaign structure, number one is just one less thing everybody's thinking about if they have things mapped correctly between the two systems, for example. So there is elements where you can auto-create SFDC campaigns from Marketo. That's great. Many people don't do that, but at the end of the day, you just want to make sure what we normally recommend is there's a one-to-one match there. And then if you're running reporting out of Marketo, great. If you're running reporting out of Salesforce, that's also fine, because it's going to be the exact same structure between the two. One area that's really important here is the channel naming, and that channel naming inside of Marketo is a mere reflection of your SFDC campaign types. Again, this is one area we see as commonly misaligned or completely different, and it just puts up more challenges, to be honest, for for people to consume the data between the two systems, and just simply going down and deciding what you're going to name your channels and your channel statuses. If I use this webinar as an example again, it would be that you were sent the invite, you registered, you attended and watched the recording. Those are examples of the statuses. In the SFDC campaign world, that's called member status. And then in both of them, again, the alignment. In Marketo, you want to check what's considered a success. So if we use this webinar as an example, some companies would consider registering a success, attending a success, and watching a recorded downloaded version a success. You just want to make sure that you do the same thing on the Salesforce side, and that the member statuses, in that case, it's called responded on the Salesforce side, that it's a mirror copy of that. This will just, again, help you with so many reporting discrepancies that we find when we're engaging with clients. So I know I'm providing some really detailed examples, but that's what I wanted to articulate to all of you, is that these little details really do make a difference when you add it up across the whole platform, and when you're doing maybe 1 or 2 different programs a week or more for some clients. The scale and the scope then starts to keep things easier for you to manage. So the end result of this, the benefit of paying attention to your, dotting your I's and crossing your T's, for lack of a better analogy, is that it ensures accurate program attribution and marketing revenue contribution when you start to run reporting. And we'll talk about that in a moment. Okay, so we've made it through number 5. The next one, and we put this before we're going to talk about lead lifecycle, which is your scoring and sales alignment, because much of this is a path, and there's a reason we put this as a road, because for many of you, this is not just simply a 1-month project. You're going to start with items 1, 2, and probably 3 in the first month or 2 of using Marketo. You get your creative templates and build those out. Your program structure starts to come together as you use it in months 3, 4, 5, and plus. Scoring and sales alignment are 2 other ones that you tend to do pretty early in the process, and it tends to be evolutionary. There's many scoring methodologies. I'm not here to promote one methodology over the other. The only thing there is it's an easy, quick win if you haven't gone through a very detailed sales alignment process quite yet, because you can still score, have a little bit more articulation around when and why you're sending leads to your sales team, and they have some concept over what's been done. So many companies will do an initial scoring and sales alignment with the goal of doing sales lifecycle and reporting as the final holy grail in the process. Areas that go along with this from a goal perspective, most clients are doing some level of demographic and behavioral scoring, which is very easy to do with Marketo. It appropriately, scores up records for the sales team. And this tends to be, as I mentioned, a closed loop process with the sales team. So they give feedback and you can go and improve the process going forward. And then areas like Marketo Sales Insight, making sure that you have that deployed, or when you're passing leads or alerts from Salesforce to your sales team, that you're providing them visibility into the activity that went along with that record. Okay, so we're up to number 8, and this one is possibly one of the most important elements of the process. It's also further down the maturity curve, if we were to think of this as going up the maturity curve, because this just takes a lot more thought, a lot more effort, and more coordination within the Marketo platform, but it has many important benefits to it. So the goal is really straightforward, right? We want to define and align the marketing to sales process, and this is where we get generally in the room with everybody, and sales and marketing is documenting literally on spreadsheets or some form of documentation exactly what everybody means with definitions and movements between different sales activities all the way to close. That's really important, translating your strategy into the technical configuration, because out of all those business discussions, you need to make that real inside the Marketo platform, and the flexibility of the platform is where the benefit is. And this is where we get into the Marketo revenue cycle modeler. And this is where you're able to achieve several of the really critical metrics around velocity, attribution, and volume. And if you sit down and get these areas documented, you're going to be able to get here. And we're going to talk in a moment about some of the outcomes that come after this and where clients try to jump to the end game a little quicker. But this really is important to get this done. You just have to be able to have these life cycle in place if you want to really know where leads are at in the process, especially before they hit the sales pipeline. Because once they're inside that sales pipeline, sales is accepted and they're working them, there's a lot of benefits and reporting that can be done within, say, Salesforce.com for that. But that's only a portion of the whole view, right? And so we want to make sure that we have that full acquisition. What was the very, very first thing that touched that lead, through to the multi-touch programs, which programs touched it along the way, at which points in the sales cycle, and then all the way to close. And once you've deployed that lead life cycle and the basic reporting, you're actually ready at that point to take on the metrics that I started this webinar with, which is the pipeline, the revenue, the lead velocity, the conversion rate, top programs pushing records into the funnel, the opportunity stages, and things like top lead source that are generating the most pipeline versus revenue. As marketers, if we have all these metrics at our disposal, it really is the very top of the marketing maturity curve today, because most marketers that are on this journey have not made it to this point yet, because it does take, for most clients, many months of work to be able to just systematically go through all those areas we mentioned on the roadmap, deploy them, make sure they're in good operating order, making sure that it's reflective of the actual business environment that you're in, and then getting all the way down to metrics. And depending on your sales cycle times, you may need to even be more patient if you have 6 or 12-month sales cycles to get all the way through the process. So it really does take discipline, but we see many, many, many of our clients make it through this process. And, in our case and many other services companies that are in this space, that's our goal, right? Our goal is to help you through this process, or ensure that you've got the guidelines to make sure you can get it through yourself. So now, after you've done all this work, you're really in the position to do what I like to think of as that optimization and beyond. And these are things like stage-based nurturing. So many times we may have clients come to us and say, hey, I want to do a middle of the funnel nurture program. Well, you can imagine if you haven't done much of the work on our roadmap here and you don't have a lead to sales lifecycle determined, it's kind of hard to actually do an effective middle of the funnel nurturing, because how do you know which leads are really in the middle of the funnel? But if you've done all the work on this roadmap, implementing that now really comes down to what's the content and the strategy and which personas do you want to attack in that middle of the funnel, because you know which leads are in the middle of the funnel. And you can quickly take that analogy to the top of the funnel, middle of the funnel, bottom of the funnel. And if you've done a good job in areas like number 3 around lead database, being able to do more advanced nurturing campaigns by criteria becomes a reality for you, and they become more effective the more work you've done in that lead database area. So you can see how almost all these are additive to each other. And the more work you've done on these lower level 1 through 8 on our list, the better your more optimized things around nurturing, account-based marketing efforts, all these other areas that are coming on board now. If you've done all this work, you're going to get maximum usage out of these other tactics and activities that you do on the marketing side. So with that, I'm going to pause. I hope that was helpful and at least gave you a clear, 1 through 8 or 9 set of steps that you can go back. You can go revisit these and say, hey, did I actually do that? Did I actually review our configuration? Have I actually looked recently at how we're running and managing the database? Have we actually sat down and documented what our lead to sales process is with definitions and reasons that leads come in and out? Is that actually still current with what we have in Marketo? Going back and asking all those questions will be able to have you quickly understand where you're at in that process. And the more you can say yes, 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 yes to every single one of those, the higher you are up that process of getting maximum usage out of your Marketo platform. So with that, Laura, I'll pause for a moment because I know looking at all the individuals on the webinar that there's going to be some questions coming in, and I'll let you fire them my way.
Absolutely. Thanks, Andrew. So the first one, what is the most common oversight you see with customers using Marketo?
Yeah, so probably the biggest oversight we see is around, it's probably around the lead database and just really fundamentally understanding what they have in their lead database and how much is really actionable, to be honest with you, because the database quality is churning so quickly, and if you don't have processes and different activities in place to run and manage and standardize things, I think many clients underestimate just how much that impacts all their efforts, whether it's, I use that example of trying to target, say, CXO level people in New York City for an executive event. You just are either missing opportunities because there's people that would meet that criteria, but you just don't have your database hygiene managed very well, or you think you're reaching out to a handful of people that meet the criteria, but they really aren't. They're in LA, for example, and there's no way they're doing a cross-country flight for the event. I think that's just one huge area that many of our clients just underestimate the attention that they probably should give that if they really want to maximize the call to actions and the campaigns and the efficacy of the campaigns that they're trying to run.
Great. Yeah, and we have one actually related to the lead database that came in. Are there Marketo partners that you would recommend to help you purge your database?
Yeah, Elixiter, we're in the business of doing that. We have 2 dedicated consultants since we have a specialist model where they live and breathe data hygiene, data program management, literally 40+ hours a week. So that's what they do. But there's other partners. If you go to the Marketo launch point, especially as you do go to the gold and platinum partners, where they might have 10+ dedicated consultants, chances are they're going to have offerings that they can quickly look at your database, size it up, and be able to give a recommendation on what it would take to clean it up. And what I would recommend too, it's not just about the initial clean. Make sure that whatever you're considering also includes ongoing smart campaigns that are going to continually look to keep it clean. And then also consider, before you continue to keep loading more data in, there's all sorts of things you can do before you load it in to try to keep that lead database as fresh and clean as possible. So really think about it as 2 parts, or 3 parts: the initial clean, what ongoing smart campaigns do you have that's going to keep it clean, and then what are you going to do to not keep inserting poor data into the system.
Great, excellent. Another question, if I should go do one thing after this webinar, what would you recommend I do first?
I would recommend, and this is a challenge I think for everybody on the phone, is go run your key metrics. And I'm going to assume you have them at some level. For some of you, it may be, hey, I need to generate so many MQLs per quarter. And that may be as far as you can go, because within your span of control and what you have control over, you've defined that, and that's the metric that you're able to deliver for your organization. For some of you, it's going to be even broader than that. It's going to be what level of contribution has marketing provided to the pipeline. And for those of you that are way up the chain as far as maturity, it's going to be, what has marketing contributed to closed won deals, and that there's a discussion there, and both sales and marketing can look each other in the eye and trust the reports. But the one thing I would ask you to do is go run those reports and really give them a once over and say, hey, where are the holes? Where, when I take this to sales, do they always question it or not believe it? And if that's the case, go and look at, is it true? And sometimes it is. There's like, hey, I know 30% or 20% of this probably isn't correct. And then really look at how you can systematically change that. So every incremental time you run that report, if it's weekly, quarterly, and have those discussions around your key metrics, you're incrementally more confident every single time that it's getting more accurate and you can make better business decisions from it, because that will drive what you need to change in your Marketo platform. I've given you guidance here on this, 1 through 8 scenario, because these are the common areas we see, but you can quickly get an idea of where you probably have some configuration optimization to do just by running your key reports, seeing where you just know it's not reflective of what's really going on, and then go and try to find the root cause of what that is. And an example might be, I know that's not the lead source on, let's say you're running your key lead attribution, your lead acquisition report, and you see something like a nurture campaign. Well, it's probably unlikely that your nurture campaign was what acquired them. It was probably something else. So you could say, okay, that's potentially a problem. Go and find that out, and you might find that you've got some program attribution or some programs running that are incorrectly taking responsibility for acquisition when they shouldn't be. Or sometimes it's a field that's getting overwritten when it should be set to write once and be locked. So those are examples. Really, I know they're very tactical, but that's what I would recommend, is run those marketing reports and then start to really vet them and give them the eagle eye from your side, and then just systematically start tackling the problems that are contributing to the poor reporting problems. And what's cool about tackling that, and then they incrementally get better, is every time you go and sit down with sales or other VPs in your company, some of you even report to the board, it's just nice when every time you can incrementally be more and more confident that the data is right, because then you spend more time talking amongst everybody about what are we going to do as a business to improve. It's not, hey, are you sure that report's right, or we only believe it. It really will up-level your discussion. So that's a long-winded answer, Laura, I know, but that's the one thing I would do.
No problem. Thank you, Andrew. I got one more here. If you covered a lot of topics. If I were to try to do everything you told us, how long does this process usually take?
We've seen clients that literally everything you saw there can get done in a 30 to 60-day window. You got to be pretty on top of it and pretty structured, but it is totally possible, even for fairly large organizations. And then we've seen some organizations where this can take 6 to 9 months, because it's just incremental. The people that are running it may or may not have full span of control over all those changes. Examples are the one I gave earlier around Marketo channels and SFDC campaign types. you may not be the owner of the SFTC system, and you've got to go present why and what you need changed. They've got to go through a change control process. That could add time, right? So it just matters how much of that is within your direct purview of control. But this does not have to be a multi-year effort by any means. I know I spanned out a roadmap that included a lot of things, but 30 to 60 days is very, very possible. And we do see some clients that are in that 6 to 9 month range as well.
Excellent. Well, that's all the questions that we have. Anything else, Andrew, you wanted to mention before we sign off?
I think that's it. I appreciate the questions coming in. I hope these were helpful. I hope there are some really good guideposts to just get you going and thinking about what you can do to really unlock that power. And I do hope you genuinely agree with me that the end of the reason we really are wanting to maximize a platform like Marketo is to really be able to drive that marketing ROI visibility, because that's what's going to give all of us as marketers that quantifiable data that just allows us to get better and make better decisions on what creative is working, what overall integrated campaigns are working. And I think just to acknowledge to all of you that are on the webinar today that this is hard work and it does take a lot of effort, but the gains you can get out of it are worth it. And when you're able to get to that end game around the metrics that I showed on the previous slides, it really is worth it. And it really does help up your game within your organization on the types of topics you're going to talk about. And I think ultimately help justify the types of resources that you want to go out and help drive even better marketing for your organization. So I just encourage you to go after it. I know it's not just a flip one switch and you're done. It's kind of a multi-switch endeavor, so to speak. But if you just start doing one every couple day and week and you get through it, you'll really be amazed at how much of a difference it makes in your operations.
Well, thank you, Andrew, and I think we'll wrap it up with that. Thank you, everyone, for attending our webinar today. If you have any other questions, Andrew's contact information should pop up here on your screen in just a moment. And on behalf of Elixiter and Andrew, I would like to thank you for joining us today and have a great rest of your day.